Imagine living in a world where your faith becomes a sentence. Not for something you did wrong, but for something you believe in. What if today, this very moment, believing in God could cost you everything you have? Your freedom, your reputation, your future. This isn't just an old Bible story. It's a warning. What you're about to hear is real. A journey between past and present. A crossing between Daniel and you. Daniel was not an ordinary man. He was upright, wise, faithful, and precisely for that reason, he was hated. In the midst of a culture that did not fear God, Daniel shone. His life was a living testimony, and that bothered them. The rulers of Babylon tried to find him in error, but there was nothing. No corruption, no slip-ups. So they decided to attack the one thing they could not control, his faith. They created a law, a trap. For 30 days, no one could pray to any god except the king. Anyone who disobeyed would be thrown alive into the lion's den. It was time for decision, but Daniel did not hesitate. Even knowing the punishment, he went up to his room, opened the windows, knelt down, and prayed. Not once, but 3 times a day, as he always did. When Daniel learned that the decree had been signed, he went into his house. In his upstairs room where the windows were open toward Jerusalem, he got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he had done before. At that moment, Daniel taught us that faithfulness to God is worth more than life itself. Today, there are no royal decrees threatening us physically, but there are unwritten laws, silent social rules. Don't talk about faith in the workplace. Don't mention Jesus at the university. Don't post verses, you might get canceled. It's a new den with new lions. Digital, social, emotional lions. The modern Christian is not faced with hungry beasts, but with invisible pressures that tear at the soul. And many, like Daniel, have to choose. Do I close the window and keep quiet? Or do I remain faithful, even if they throw me among the beasts? Daniel didn't seek to provoke, but he didn't hide his faith either. He didn't pray in secret. He didn't murmur in secret. He placed himself before God, even knowing that the world was watching him. What would you do if all eyes were on you, waiting for you to fall? Night fell on Babylon, and with it the decree was fulfilled. Daniel, now considered a criminal, was dragged through the stone streets under the indifferent gaze of the crowd. There were no screams. There was no resistance. Only the sound of footsteps and the heart that trusted even in the face of the abyss. King Darius, the one who had signed the sentence, was distressed. He tried to free Daniel, but the law was irrevocable. At the door of the den, the king whispered, "Your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you." But the sky was silent. No angel descended. No voice echoed. The den was sealed. A stone was placed over the entrance, and Daniel was forgotten by the world. Then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. And the king spake and said unto Daniel, Thy God, whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. Imagine this scene today. You are faithful, you pray, you love God, but one day, everything starts to go wrong. Doors close, friendships disappear, the diagnosis arrives, unemployment knocks, and the sky seems silent. You pray and the silence remains. How many of us don't ask ourselves in these moments, Lord, are you there? Why don't you answer me? Daniel didn't hear an answer that night, but he didn't stop trusting. It is in these moments of silence that faith stops being a theory and becomes real trust. Because faith is not feeling, it is continuing even without understanding. Faith is remaining firm even when the sky is silent. Faith is entering the grave, believing that God is there before you. The night in Babylon was long. King Darius could not sleep. He refused food, music, or distractions. His spirit was troubled. Something in Daniel had touched him deeply, a faith the king had never seen before. At the first sign of dawn, he ran. Yes, a king running. He went down to the den, without escort, without pride, only hope. And he cried out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, could your God, whom you serve continually, have delivered you from the lions?" There was silence, and then the voice he had most expected to hear answered, "O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths." God did not avoid the pit, but he descended into it. This is a truth that changes everything. God does not always deliver us from the fire, but he walks with us in it. He does not always deliver us from the valley, but he prepares the table right in the middle of the darkness. Psalm 23:4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Today's generation, faced with their own pits, be it depression, abandonment, or social pressures, often hopes to be spared from suffering. But true Christianity is not a shortcut to escape pain. It is the certainty that, even in it, we are never alone. Daniel did not see the angel coming, he simply trusted. And God was faithful. Today, perhaps you too are in a pit, and perhaps heaven seems silent. But believe me, while you wait, the God who sees in secret has already come down to fight for you. The sun was already rising over the walls of Babylon. Daniel, an old man, emerged from the pit without a scratch. No marks, no wounds, no smell of death. The crowd that had previously seen him as a criminal now looked at him with fear and amazement. It was as if eternity itself had touched this man. King Darius, deeply moved, immediately ordered that Daniel's accusers be thrown into the same pit. And before they even reached the bottom, the lions overpowered them. But the high point was not the deliverance. It was what happened next. King Darius, emperor of one of the most powerful nations of the ancient world, wrote a decree, a new edict, this time not to persecute, but to exalt. Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my kingdom people will tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. He delivers and saves and works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. It was he who delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. What was supposed to be the end of a faithful servant became the beginning of a revival within the palace. One man's faith shook an empire. And today, how many of us are ashamed to pray in public? How many are silent in the face of criticism, mockery, rejection? Daniel did not seek fame, nor revolution. He simply knelt down as he always did. And it was this constancy in faith that moved heaven and shook the earth. In this day and age, a literal grave is not necessary. All it takes is a world that tries at all costs to silence us, to mold us, to make us forget who God is. But just like Daniel, we are called to stand tall, even when everyone else is kneeling to the system. Today, there are no lions roaring behind stone bars. There are no Assyrian kings issuing death sentences for prayer. But there is a new grave, quieter, more subtle, more dangerous. It hides in the hallways of work, where talking about faith can cost you a promotion. At university, where belief in God is seen as intellectual weakness. On social media, where a biblical opinion can attract hatred, cancellation, isolation. The invisible grave of today has no lions, but it does have the constant pressure to silence us. It has the fear of being rejected, discredited, called radical or outdated. And then many begin to bow down, not to the golden idols as in Nebuchadnezzar's time, but to modern idols, acceptance, fame, comfort, relativism. How many today have stopped praying so as not to appear fanatic? How many have abandoned the word for fear of criticism? How many have silenced their own faith so as not to be thrown into the pit of contempt? But Daniel's story echoes like a call. Do not stop praying. Do not hide your light. Do not negotiate your faith. Because today's pit is different, but the promise is the same. God still sends his angels. He still shuts the mouths of lions. He still exalts those who are not ashamed of his name. Daniel was taken to a strange land, new culture, new language, new gods. Everything around him screamed for him to conform, but he did not bend. He did not enter the palace of Babylon to adapt. He entered to be salt and light. In his youth, he refused the king's banquet in Daniel 1. In his old age, he maintained his routine of prayer, even in the face of death, Daniel 6. Throughout his life, Daniel was consistent. His faith was firm, silent, and powerful. And this firmness transformed the environment. Governors envied him. Kings respected him. Heaven listened to him. Today, many Christians believe that they need to flee corrupt environments in order to remain faithful. But Daniel proves otherwise. He remained in the midst of corruption, paganism, and idolatry, and yet he was not contaminated. On the contrary, he influenced. How many environments in our lives need transformation? Maybe it's your home, your work, your school, your circle of friends. It's not by fleeing that we glorify God, but by being a firm presence where evil wants to dominate. Being a Christian is not about shining when everything is clear. It's about keeping the flame burning when everything seems dark. Daniel was a voice. He was a difference. And for that, he was exalted. The lion is not always silenced. The door to the den does not always open. The miracle does not always come with thunder and glory. Sometimes, the greatest miracle is to keep believing. Daniel did not know that the lions would be tamed. He did not have a prophetic vision telling him that he would come out unscathed. All he had was the certainty that praying 3 times a day was still worth it. He did not pray for deliverance. He prayed for faithfulness. This is the essence of faith that endures. Faith that does not depend on the outcome. Faith that does not bargain. Faith that does not change with the world's climate. Today, many give up when the lion roars. They give up when their prayers are not answered immediately, when there are no signs, when God's silence seems too long. But Daniel teaches us that faithfulness in secret builds eternal victories. He did not seek applause, titles, or deliverance. He sought God. And this kind of faith does not go unnoticed. Even if the world ignores your perseverance, even if no one sees your nightly prayers, even if you remain silent, heaven sees you. And when heaven sees, he acts. Maybe today, you are not surrounded by lions, but by doubts, fears, loneliness. Maybe your grave has no bars, but there is silence, discouragement, closed doors, and the question echoes loudly in your heart: how long will I hold on? Daniel did not win because he was the strongest, but because he decided every day to remain faithful. No matter the law, no matter the threat, no matter the size of the grave, he knew who he trusted. And today, that same faith is within your reach. You may be in the midst of Babylon, but your prayer can still touch the heavens. Your faithfulness can still shut the mouths of lions. Your courage can still inspire kings and overturn decrees. You don't need to be seen by men. You need to be found by God. Because those who stand, even when alone, even when in tears, are the ones the Lord lifts up, honors, and protects. Now, the choice is yours. Will you hide your faith, or will you pray with the windows open? Will you negotiate your values, or stand firm in the midst of the system? Will you remain silent, or be a prophetic voice like Daniel was? If this message touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who is going through an invisible grave. Write in the comments, "I will not stop praying." And remember, God still closes the mouths of lions when he finds hearts that do not bend. Are you ready to be Daniel in your generation?